Good morning, everybody. It is my pleasure to welcome and speak to these award-winning, accomplished teachers today. But before we jump into our conversation, I thought I'd take a few words to describe how the Atlantic and this group of incredible teachers came together today. For the past 3 months, we've been documenting interviews with Pirette McKamey on the art and craft of writing, of teaching writing, with Deborah on teaching independent research projects in physics, and with Dr. Rebecca Palacios on the best practices in early childhood. And the reason we're doing this is because our schools are going through a big but very quiet transformation. In the next 5 years or so, the majority of our experienced teachers will retire, who are part of the baby boomer generation. They will retire. And they're leaving behind a generation that is much greener. For instance, in 1988, the average teacher had 15 years of experience, and by 2012, the typical educator had 5 years of experience. So we felt that in this moment of transition, it was really important to record the knowledge and wisdom of some of the most accomplished educators of this generation, and ask them, what kind of practices helped you bring out the best in your students? Now, back to the present and most urgent issues at hand. I thought that I would start asking you questions about teacher strikes that are in the news a lot lately. We're witnessing some of the biggest strikes we've seen in recent history, and they seem to be enjoying broader public support than usual. And it seems that there's a rare opening when teachers' voices might be heard by policymakers and voters. And most educators, policymakers, voters, they don't have the benefit of historical perspective and deep classroom experience that you do. And with that in mind, I wanted to ask you, what 2 things helped you succeed the most? What should we be facilitating better? I'd like to start with you, Rebecca, if you don't mind.
Sure. I think one of the very most important things happened early on in the beginning of my career. I started teaching in 1976, and as a novice, brand new green teacher, I had in place in the school a federal grant called Follow-Through Program, which is an extension of Head Start. And part of that was that it would focus on teacher quality, which is great back then. I mean, it was one of the things you hear now. But starting that conversation early on in providing clinical support, the teachers would, these consultants would come and model for us what these lessons should look like in early childhood, what we should model back for them when they came back to visit. So those 3 years of mentoring and modeling and coaching us through this period of time when we wanted to be high quality teachers really set me off on the right road to know what I needed to ask of students and what to ask of myself. And then the second thing that was very important was to have a very supportive administrator. And so Mr. Eddie Torres, who was my principal mentor for 24 years, really empowered me as a teacher, not only to continue learning as a novice teacher, but also to empower me as I grew into a veteran teacher to continue to lead from the classroom.
Mm-hmm. And I just wanted to jump in and add that as this was especially critical because Corpus Christi, Texas was going through the first year of desegregation, and there was just a lot of conflict and turmoil, and that coaching and supportive principal, it sounds like, was especially helpful. Yeah. We have a story coming up later today about all the monumental civil rights battles that took place in Corpus Christi, Texas, so we hope you check that out. What about you, Deborah? What were 2 things that helped you succeed the most, you think, if you look back at your 30 years of working in the classrooms?
Yeah, I'm just going to kind of echo what Becky just said. I think it's, if I look at personal characteristics, it's that mindset of always learning. And so I love to learn, and I learn from other people, I learn from my failures, I learn from my successes. And my professional development experiences, all the high quality activities that I was able to engage in. Again, science is my discipline. And so there's lots of great experiences for science teachers. And I engaged in those to improve my content knowledge, but also to improve my teaching practices in my classroom.
Could you mention one that was just particularly memorable? One fellowship or any, any kind of program that was, really
Right.
helpful?
I did a summer fellowship at Oklahoma Medical Research Foundation early in my career, and I had developed a junior high science research program. And after I spent 8 weeks in the laboratory of a medical researcher, but we were focusing on using some knowledge to prepare lessons that teachers could use in the classroom. But not only what I learned there, but also the connections that I made there helped my research students in the future. And so that we were able to reach out, and almost every professional development activity that I've been involved in around the country, I've made not only acquired new knowledge and skills, but also expanded my network of professional contacts and people in education and outside of education that have helped me grow, which has helped my students succeed.
And did you find them on your own? Was this on your, did you seek them out on your own and then found funding, or was this a mix of support from the schools and your own funding?
Yeah, most of the time I sought them on my own, but there were also times when my colleagues, usually in other places, because I taught in a small rural school, but I did have one science teaching colleague. I was at the junior high. My colleague at the high school, he actually encouraged me when I first began to start, going to these conferences and seeking these fellowships. And so, he kind of mentored me in a way, and we learned together. And then as I gained more experience, I sought out experiences on my own.
Mm-hmm.
Had great administrative support for everything that I did. Not some of it occurred in the summer, but a lot of it occurred during the school year. And they gave me the freedom to attend those conferences and to be out of my classroom.
Mm-hmm. What about you, Pirette? What stands out?
I think the most important thing for me was developing lasting, critical partnership with other educators on site. And so central to efficacious teaching, I think, is reflection, experimentation, analysis, and doing that in community really blossoms that experience. So you can keep coming back to the classroom, knowing better what to do. I remember my first 8 years of teaching, I kept saying to veteran teachers, but what is it? Like, what is this animal? What do you do? And so I did it day in and day out, and it was only after 8 years that I said, oh, I get it. I can see it. I can see the shape of it. I get how to organize a year, and then a unit, and then a lesson, and then an hour. And so time to do that is critical, to meet in groups with other professionals. And then the other thing that was really beneficial to me, that kept me alive and alert and hungry, is having enrichment opportunities, such as the Bay Area Writing Project, where I was involved in research groups and writing groups and lots of different things like that.
Mm-hmm. And I found it fascinating when we've talked in the past that you made sure that whenever you moved to another school, that you moved with your longtime partner. You've had a professional relationship with one of the teachers for a long time. And I think you mentioned that when this, typically, we talk about this in the book about Mission High School, that when the support for that kind of work wasn't there, it became difficult to do. And you left for Mission High School at the time. So I think it sounds like, having the time and the freedom to do it also at the administrative level is important. What about, I wanted to ask you, what advice would you give to, a couple of teachers who perhaps feel isolated and want to engage in the kind of work that you did on their own? What advice would you give them? How to do it well and meaningfully?
Well, one place to start is with the students. So when they're grappling with issues about how to be good teachers to the students in front of them, especially when you're talking about anti-racist teaching, to look for the teachers who are successful with those students. Start there. Start with teachers who have a track record as evinced by, student success. And so I think those are the beginning conversations, is to start someplace real where veteran teachers or successful teachers can help new teachers have successes starting out and grow those successes.
Mm-hmm. You're the co-founder of the Anti-Racist Teaching Committee in San Francisco. Could you just briefly say what that is for folks who are not familiar?
Yeah, but not in San Francisco, at Mission High School.
I'm sorry, Mission High School.
So anti-racist teaching is about pedagogy. It's about making the commitment to teach every student in front of you. And so it's about looking at the data, looking at student work. We spend hours poring over student work and student grades and student test scores, and looking for patterns, looking for, first of all, patterns of success. What's working? How can we replicate it? How can we mentor it and teach it? And then what's not working? What do we have to address? So it's a group of educators coming together and meeting and looking at that, and then engaging in professional development on site.
I wanted to ask you, what things do you think would have made you even more successful that just weren't there, if you reflect back on your career? I'd like to start with you, Deborah, if you don't mind.
I thought about this a little bit. I think that if I'd had more planning time at school. So I taught, in our school, we had 7 45-minute periods of instruction. I taught 6 of those and had 45 minutes of planning time per day. And people say, well, what would you have done with that? Well, I would have planned lessons. I would have designed and set up laboratory activities. I would have spent more time on student assessment. I would have reached out to families to engage them more, to inform them about student progress more often in a more personal manner. I would have, read research and just engaged in professional development in my classroom, and that may have also provided more time for collaboration with colleagues across disciplines. In a small school, when you're the only teacher teaching that grade level subject, as I was, so we kind of struggled with how do we collaborate with our colleagues across disciplines. When I read the book about how you did that, Pirette, how you did that at your school, where you had teachers from different disciplines just focusing on student work to learn from that and to grow together, that was an aha moment for me. It may have been, I should have maybe thought of that, but we were so siloed in our disciplines that we looked at great teachers below and above our grade level rather than looking at how we could collaborate for the students that we were all teaching at that time. So more time for planning, which may have promoted more collaboration.
What about you, Becky? What would have made you more effective in the classroom?
Well, I thought about my lengthy career, 34 years of teaching, and I really think about success, and I kind of narrowed it down to, it really made me happy to be in the classroom for that long period of time. So my success, I wouldn't even say I could have made it any better because I had so many rich opportunities. I called myself the luckiest teacher in America because not only did I get to stay in the classroom for 34 years, but I got to mentor other teachers. I got to work with families. I got to write curriculum. I got to work with cutting-edge technology when it was just coming out, worked to the forefront of that. Then I was asked to be on the founding board of the National Board for Professional Teaching Standards. That elevated my professional career to another level, and then came back later on after becoming board certified as its vice chair. No teacher could ask for more. I felt like, I was dealt this wonderful, jack of, this hand that was just great. So I'm going to turn that around and say, I want that, and I wish that, and I desire that for every single teacher in America, not only to have these successes, but to also first attract the best and the brightest and give them a competitive wage where they will stay there, like I did, as a career teacher. And second of all, to keep them there through very structured mentoring, coaching models that'll keep them there beyond those 5 years, because that's when we lose them because they lack that support. So being a teacher that had all those wonderful learning opportunities, that's what I want for everyone.
What about you, Pirette? What would have helped your practice? What would have helped you be more effective that perhaps wasn't there?
Like both of you, I had a lot of support, a lot of great support, you know, and from other teachers, from organizations, iRise, Caxea, Bay Area Writing Project, but more time, as I said earlier, to reflect with colleagues, to really think about what I was doing and to make modifications to be an even better teacher to the students. So time. You know, it's such a hamster wheel teaching, you know, teaching 5 classes as I started every day, teaching 140 students, and then having a stack of paper every night like this, you know. And I'm from the generation where doing that made you feel really good.
Yeah.
So no complaint.
Yeah.
However, once I became a certain age, I could not maintain that pace, and also it's not a match for the current generation. And also, I mean, is it good just to work hard for the sake of working hard? Shouldn't we, the center of how we think about it, be about results?
We're going to move into the last question, and I just wanted to give the audience a heads up that we'll take some questions, so please start thinking. But one of the questions that I wanted to ask is, as I mentioned earlier, you know, in the next 5 years or so, some of the most experienced, better educators will retire, and the attrition in schools that serve students with high needs is quite high. You know, one study said that a fifth of all teachers in high poverty schools leave every year. And you all worked in schools that serve students with high needs. And I wanted to ask you, how do you think we can facilitate this transition to the new generation in ways that will help them, you know, create classrooms of excellence and equity? And can you see yourself play a meaningful role in that? You know, if you could do anything you want with that transition, what would that role look like? I'd like to start with you, Pirette.
I think it's about authentic mentoring and coaching relationships between veteran, successful teachers and the newer teachers. So it's being in their classrooms. There's so much that goes into teaching, and one part about it is making so many decisions in 15 minutes. So many decisions are being made, and it's good to have someone observe you as a new teacher who can comment on those things, speak to what goes behind the decision making. Why did you think about a student a certain way? Why did you make that choice to respond like that? So it's helping younger teachers analyze what they're doing, I'd say.
What about you, Deborah?
Much of the teacher leadership that occurs in schools is hidden. So we need to make that more formal, where experienced teachers, successful educators have a chance to, as part of their day, actually to be in other classrooms and mentoring colleagues and taking on leadership roles. I also had leadership roles, but they were major leadership roles with federal programs for providing professional development. But it was in addition to my all-day long teaching. So just there are some states that I believe have those roles, and our state is moving toward providing extra stipends for teachers who do that. Also, like my current role now with our State Department of Education, I am a school support specialist. So I'm able to use my experience in the classroom now as I work with schools that are designated for improvement. So I work with principals, I work with teachers, I provide professional development, I go in classrooms, and so I'm still in the classroom, just in a different role.
Mm-hmm. Let's turn to the audience and see if they have questions for any of our teachers.
Okay. Hi, my name is Brianna, and I'm from New Explorers High School. So, you know, as teachers, you're taught to help us get, you know, with our future, but how do you help a student who don't feel as though they have a future?
Brett, do you mind answering that? Or does anyone want to answer that? Who will take that?
Well, I'll pitch in. As you know, I'm an early childhood teacher, and I think it all begins in those formative years. And if we can, you know, really build on children's social and emotional feelings, their welfare, teach the whole child. I think right now we've gotten so far away, and you know, you think of all the panels that have spoken this morning, and we talk about those connections to a person and their care and their love and their devotion and their education to those children. So if we start early childhood in a universal way across this country, where we're going to make a specific difference in the lives of children, so that when they get to that point, when they get to your high school, we can kind of be avoiding all those issues that happen early on. Because as an early childhood teacher, I could see children that were 3 and 4 years old with unmanageable anger issues. And so many social emotional baggage issues, even at that early age. And what have we done? We've swept them under the rug for a long time. Well, it's developmental. Well, let's take time. Let's document it. By then, they're in middle school, and then they're in high school, and we've lost the opportunity to intervene early. So I think that early intervention, to be preventative, is going to be crucial as we move forward.
That's a great question. Did you want to add anything? Yeah, Deborah.
So I taught in middle school and junior high, where people said, who would ever want to teach that age group? And I love that age group. And so just continuing after you've addressed them, you know, started meeting their needs earlier, to develop those relationships at a very crucial time in their development, and also to provide learning opportunities to engage them. We did project-based learning, authentic project-based learning in my classroom. And some kids that were not engaged in anything else, you know, found meaning in that because it was meaningful. It was a real problem that we were working on and providing solutions, and they were able to contribute to it. So just, you know, strengthening those relationships and provide them meaningful opportunities to learn.
I want to add one more thing.
Please do.
In addition to what Becky and Deborah said, I would say it's also seeing the student, recognizing the student's intellectual, academic strengths that they bring. And sometimes that's a struggle for some teachers, and that's part of training teachers, to see the student and what they're doing academically and intellectually. So it's shining light on what they're doing already, their strengths that they bring.
Right, that was a surprising thing when I observed teachers at Mission High School working groups, is how much training it takes to see what's there, and it's what's working rather than what's not working. And I even applied it in my own life. You know, my tendency as I edit someone's work is to see what's not there and what's not working, rather than start from, okay, what are all the strengths that are there, and how can we build on that? So thank you for that question, Pirette. Well, let's thank our panelists for taking some of the longest journeys here.